Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Danto. We have a great show for you this week. The first half of the show is a conversation that Dave Michels and I had with Javed Khan, the new CEO at Neat, who's starting the position today, or just about today. And he kind of asked us to hold this interview until he could actually speak to his people. So that's why we're airing it late. And then Dave and I are joined by Roopam Jain from Frost and Sullivan for the second half of the show to kind of talk about what our speculation is about where the industry is going, where we think Neat's going, and where we think Javed's going to go. So take a look. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And we have a very special guest joining us for a quick conversation today. His name you might have heard in the industry before is Javed Khan. Javed has just been announced as the new CEO.
I've heard that name before.
He's just been announced as the new incoming CEO of Neat. Javed, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's excited to be back talking to the two of you.
So let us be among the first. I know we're not the first. Let us be among the first to congratulate you on the return to the industry and your new position at Neat. Very exciting.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave, it is it's an industry I spent a lot of time in before, and can't wait to see what you guys have been up to and what the industry is up to. But I've got some ideas on what we can be doing going forward.
So before we start, very quickly, when do you start the position? When does the position begin for you?
Yeah, so I formally start end of the month, but I've been kind of following along. You guys are all on my LinkedIn feed, so I feel like I'm pretty up to speed on what's been going on.
I was wondering who was reading that LinkedIn feed. That's great. So we know you, and a lot of people watching this video probably know you. You were at Cisco, I think, for 9 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And quite a time. You stabilized operations during the pandemic. You stabilized some things after some leadership changes. You caused the famous truce in devices with Cisco and Microsoft. You woke up the CCAS stuff at WebEx, and you reconnected the Broadworks story to WebEx. A lot of accomplishments. Oh, you did lots of major acquisitions too, including IMI Mobile and Slido and many others. So very well known. Great to have you back. I think this is going to be an exciting time for Neat.
Yeah, that was an exciting time for me at Cisco. I think especially the second half of my career running the collaboration business, there was lots going on, partially because of what was going on structurally, right, with the side effects of COVID. Lots of innovation across the industry, partially because of very stiff competition from smaller players and larger ones too. So that was an exciting time. I enjoyed my time there. We had a great leadership team, but I think there is more of that continues. I think in the collaboration space, especially with software and hardware. So that's one of the reasons I was attracted to Neat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a question that we both had, and I think that everybody's going to have on the top of their mind. We know you had a sweet spot for video and collaboration and hardware with all that you did at Cisco, but then you moved over to the automotive sector, which is a little surprising, but I understand it. You're certainly involved in software, and now you're coming back to, I guess, a smaller hardware player. And I guess the question would really be, what attracted you? Why? What is it about the Neat opportunity that wants to bring you back into this mess that we all call collaboration?
Yeah, so firstly, it starts for me with products. I think Neat has built an amazing product line. They've focused on the simplicity, intelligence concept, and they've got some amazing products. I grew up as a product guy, and the idea of building products that touch end users every single day is always been attractive to me. I was doing that in my previous role, not just at Cisco, but also at Aptiv, I think. But at Aptiv, it was a little bit more of an supplier of technology that goes into cars. The second thing is, I think Neat has some outstanding momentum. They're growing really, really fast. They're at a point where they are ready to scale up to the next level, right? From a few hundreds of millions of dollars to a lot more than that. And I've run companies at scale, both at Cisco and my current role. So it was the right time when the folks at Neat called, taking a company with great products, growing really, really fast, being able to scale that so that we can support tens, hundreds of thousands of users. That's my sweet spot. Secondly, one of the reasons I went to the automotive space was I think the future is at the intersection of software and hardware, and we did that pretty well at when I was at Cisco. I was doing that at Aptiv also, where we were building autonomous driving, which is really the intersection of software and hardware, especially on the edge, where a lot of the intelligence lives at the edge. And I think the future in collaboration, also the big opportunity is going to be that intersection of software and hardware. And I think Neat's uniquely positioned to do that. I've got a background in both those areas. I think that's where the next wave of innovation is going to be. Partially because writing software has gotten so much easier because of the tools out there. The
Yep.
differentiation is going to be building those experiences to that intersection of software and hardware. I can't be more excited. I've got some really good ideas. The Neat team's already working on some of those, and look for that continued innovation. A smaller player like Neat has to sustain its product differentiation to be competitive. And I think you're going to see us do both: scale the company from a go-to-market and product standpoint with the existing portfolio, but then start to innovate at that intersection of software and hardware.
I'm glad you mentioned scale because I don't think a lot of people realize, the industry as a whole during the pandemic had to discover scale. We never expected everyone to be working from home like overnight. And I know Cisco had its challenges, but so did everybody else. And so talk about being drinking from the fire hose from a scalability perspective. I'm curious how familiar you are with Neat because Neat was launched when you were at Cisco, obviously. The past 2 years, the company has grown tremendously. Were you very familiar with them when you were at Cisco?
Yeah, so I think yes, they launched while I was at Cisco. I think they were a lot smaller back then, but they always have been really, really good at building really good experiences for the Zoom and the Microsoft ecosystem. And their devices are simple, easy to use. That's what they've focused on. And I learned this back when I was at Cisco, where ultimately simplicity and ease of use does merit and deserve a premium. And I think that's so I've been following them closely. I think what surprised me was the growth the last couple of years. I think they really are ready to take that next step, both from a product portfolio standpoint, but also from a go-to-market standpoint, right? When you get to those kinds of numbers, the channel, the ecosystem that you have to build requires additional focus. So been following them along. I love, and I know some of the folks on the team, right? So many of them are people I've worked with in the past, so fairly familiar with it. So looking forward to kind of digging in when I get started at the end of the month.
Oh, I want to go back to something you said a minute ago about the opportunity being in hardware and software. Um, for a company like Neat, it seems so much of the software has to come from the platform providers. In the case of Neat, it's primarily Microsoft and Zoom. Do you think there's a significant software opportunity in that environment?
Yeah, so I would phrase that as there is the change that's happened, especially in the last couple of years, is you can do a lot more with software at the edge, if I may, in the hardware, because you have way more powerful hardware. You have a lot of language models, which have now become small enough and powerful enough that you can run them in the hardware. This was not possible before because you had to do this in the cloud. So there was this round trip time, there was a latency, there was a privacy issue. So in this new world where you have powerful hardware, where you have powerful language models, video models that you can run on hardware, specifically video devices, I think there's a lot of value the hardware provider can add to a Microsoft Teams meeting, to a Zoom meeting, or to a Google meeting, but also before and after, or outside of the meeting. And I think that is only going to be possible when you marry that software advancements with what the hardware is capable of doing. So we are at a unique time where what's happened in the last couple of years with powerful SoCs, with powerful language models, just enables experiences that we'd wished for before, but because of latency and privacy, we couldn't pull off.
So let me ask you a couple of questions. Again, this is very early. I know you haven't spoken to your product teams yet, so I'm really just looking for your general perspective about where the industry that you're now rejoining is going. When you were with Cisco, you kind of broke through the walled garden there, and Cisco, while you were gone, has become the most interoperable player out there, where they can connect to just about everything almost natively. You're joining Teams. Teams has a strategy that connects natively to Google Meet now, as well as to Zoom and to Microsoft. And now we've got this idea of sovereign capabilities coming in. France is now talking about using their own software that may grow depending upon I really didn't think we'd still be talking about interoperability this many years later. What's your strategy and position around that, and how you see Neat handling the whole interoperability issue as the world grows and potentially more platforms come to market? Are you going to build more internally? Are you going to go third parties? Have you thought about how complicated this is going to be?
No, so Neat's the bread and butter, and that's how they got started. Was always to make existing work with existing meetings platform, right? So be interoperable with them, and I think that's going to continue to be a focus of Neat. I know I'm still as I talk to the team, obviously I'll form an opinion on that, but that's where Neat is focused. We will continue to want to do that. I know other players have also started to do that. I was one of the people who made the decisions back when I was at Cisco. But there is a lot more room, I think, in terms of interoperability. There's still some platforms that are not completely open, right? So there is more room there, but that's going to be Neat's focus area. I think the way we want to think of it going forward is outside of so once you enable interoperability, how can the hardware platform and the hardware and software platform running on these devices add value to those experiences, right? And I think there's a lot more room to do that based on some of the things I mentioned earlier. That's going to continue to be our focus. I think that's a welcome change from 5, 6, 7 years ago, where you had these walled gardens and it was very, very difficult to talk across them.
David and I were just at ISE Barcelona last month, and so you'll be happy to know the video hardware space is alive and well. There's a lot of innovation going on there. Um, I would say Neat amongst the competition that we saw there is probably one of the smaller companies, and B, one of the more elegant players in that space. Do those attributes, were those attractive to you, or are you coming in to change all that?
No, that was one of the bigger drivers of why I decided to take a role with Neat, right? And I learned this during my career at Cisco, right? We saw some very serious competition coming out of COVID from smaller, faster moving, elegant players. I think Neat has started to do that on the conference room side with their simplicity, with their ease of use. We'll continue to build on that, not just with the existing portfolio, but some of the newer things that I'm talking about. I believe, given my background and the strong team that the team already has on the engineering side, one of the strategies is going to be to just move faster when it comes to these new experiences.
So following up on the question that Dave said, you're entering a very crowded space right now. And without repeating everything that he said, you have big companies like Microsoft and Cisco selling tremendous amounts of video bars, and you have smaller companies, everybody entering the market every day, every week with a new entrant. What's going to be Neat's general strategy in such a crowded space to differentiate?
Yeah, so I think I go back to, I still believe that ultimately experience, simplicity, ease of use merits a premium, and companies who do that well are going to gain market share, right? Now, that said, if you look at all these players, there is very few, right? Neat's one of them, who are singularly focused on the best experience for the conference room. There are others who are doing it, but they might have either broader charters or maybe a little distracted because of other things going on inside those companies. So we feel there's an opportunity to take market share in this space. In addition to going after those conference rooms that are still empty without a video bar, right? I spent a couple of years as a customer in some ways, and it still amazed me how many conference rooms still don't have those experiences, partially because not everybody has done a great job at providing those simple, easy, I put the bar in, I hook it up to the TV, it's up and running. So in fact, by some measure, there's more than 70, 75, 80% or 60% rooms that don't have bars. So that comes back to experiences, simple experiences. The second piece is I think there's an opportunity to take market share from some of the other players who are distracted.
I wish I had one of those while you were out message pads, because while you were out, um, Microsoft launched a whole new Android operating system called MDEP. I'm sure you've heard of it. And when they did that, they kind of erased a lot of the innovation and head start that companies like Neat had by developing their own Android. Do you think that that Android that Neat developed might be usable in some other way, or do you think that's just going to be eliminated from the portfolio?
No, absolutely. I think. Look, first of all, the strategy for Neat has always been to be the best vendor out there when it comes to supporting not just Microsoft but the Zoom ecosystem. So the team will continue to do that. That's a dedicated focus. I know our friends at Microsoft and Zoom pretty well from my previous relationships. So we'll continue to do that. But I think the opportunity for Neat outside of those use cases is where that operating system and outside of just the meetings use cases is where that platform is still going to be useful. Now, obviously, I have a lot to learn about it. I think that's something, I know there was something similar at Cisco, and we need to map that to use cases that add value for our customers. And that could be a place where it could be used.
In your high level view, how does Neat grow? Do you go past traditional video conference rooms? Are you going to look at the desktop? Are you going to look at non-video applications? Are you going to look at voice? What's there's got to be a strategy in your mind for growing the organization.
Yeah, so Neat's already growing pretty fast, right? I don't have the numbers for all the competitors, but it's one of the fastest growing players. So the immediate number one, the first opportunity is continuing to supercharge that growth, right? And the way we do that is, there's a large room portfolio, and the portfolio that the team is continuing to complete. So that allows us to go after additional rooms with our existing customers. The second is the competitive takeouts, so growing market share. I think that there's an opportunity with simplicity that Neat can do that. And then the conference rooms that still don't have video in them. So I feel with the existing portfolio, building on top of that, the growth in the immediate term is going to come from those focus areas, while we build out some of those experiences that allow these devices. You've got this device sitting in a room which outside of a meeting isn't being used. How can we use that? And I think that's going to be the next wave of innovation, which I'm hoping to drive. And I think that's going to create newer opportunities, both software and hardware.
Well, that sounds exciting. Sticking in the meeting, let's go for the low-hanging fruits. Going back to the meeting room, is it? Do you think there's much of an opportunity to keep on improving the meeting experience in the meeting room? Because you were part of this. I mean, we've already seen multiple cameras come out. We've seen impressive noise reduction in the rooms. AI has changed a lot of capabilities with translation and transcripts. Are we about done? I mean, at what point are we done with AI innovation in the room?
I'd say actually it's both. Even the basic use cases, joining a meeting in a meeting room, right? I think in partnership with Microsoft, with Zoom, with Google, right? There's room for making it even more easier. We made phenomenal strides versus back in the day before COVID. It was the experiences versus where we are today. So improving the existing experiences, the basics around it, right? That will continue to be a focus area. And second is use cases, outside. So before and after, I think now can be improved significantly because you've got this tremendous computing power, and you've got the ability to run AI on the device. So those would be areas I'll be looking to collaborate, not just with our partners, but also with the wonderful team at Neat.
What do you bring from your last couple of years of experience in the automotive industry to Neat? Because we all learn different things and we pick up different perspectives. Obviously, you had a different perspective when you saw the empty rooms that had the opportunity to have bars put in. But, from skills, from technology, what things do you bring with you that you think will help your time?
And I'm curious about how your experience was in automotive because you were using video conferencing as a customer instead of a developer.
Yeah, so I think to your second question, I'll get to the first one. I think that's why I believe that there is so many rooms out there that still have not been tapped, right? Because most places, including my current employer and my active, where I spent 2 years, there were so many rooms where we haven't rolled out video conferencing and it's needed there. And some of that is the process of rolling it out, installing it, the first time experience. So I think that is one of my observations. The first question in terms of learning, I think the auto industry, and by the way, we built, for those not familiar, we built technology for automotive, aerospace and defense, and robotics, the technology stack that goes into it. But the automotive space is one of the most underappreciated space in terms of the amount of AI that they've put into cars, right? Autonomous driving is one of the hardest problems out there where hardware and software intersect, right? You've got sensors that are in real time from making some very, very critical decisions, and they have to get it right all the time. They cannot hallucinate, right? So my biggest takeaway learning was the scale at which that industry builds these systems. They have to get it right all the time. Otherwise, it's headline news, right? And secondly, the supply chain, manufacturing, and the capabilities that they've built to do that at a very low cost, right? Because cost is a primary motivator for a lot of the automobile industry. So as companies scale up their hardware, their supply chains, their support processes, their service processes, how do you do that at a very, very low cost? And I think the auto industry is one of the best at doing that. And as I look to scale up Neat, I think those things will come in handy. But even the technology, I mean, going back to it, it is one of those industries that does not get enough credit for how long they've been doing AI in these devices. And I was just myself surprised but fascinated by the progress that industry has made.
So your good friend and mine, Snora Kespu, came back to Cisco from B&O and brought with him headphones and B&O headphones. So you're coming back to Neat, to the video industry from an automotive company. Have you seen the Zoox vehicles? We were just in Las Vegas and seeing all these autonomous cars driving around. Is there an opportunity for video in some of these autonomous vehicles? And is that something you're going to bring with you from the automotive industry?
Yeah, so Snor is a good friend of mine, and I think experiences outside of our industry are just enrich not just your ability to manage, but are learnings that you otherwise wouldn't get. I think most of the cars already have some form of video conferencing in there today. And frankly, video conferencing while you're driving isn't normally the best use case that comes to mind. The Zoox vehicles are also very powerful vehicles. I spent a lot of time studying them. Maybe there the use case is a little bit more interesting, but I think there's an ecosystem already there where the automotive vendors have the ability to run most of those applications.
Well, I'm sure you know this, but you left Cisco on good terms. People there speak very highly of you to this day. My question is, are you concerned about how your friends, you just talked about Snorri there, how they're going to feel about you leading Neat? Because there was a lot of mixed reaction to when Rowan went to Five9, for example.
Yeah, I think a lot's changed, Dave, right? So I think I had a fantastic team there, and I've stayed in touch. I stay in touch with most of them, right? So, but many of my kind of team members there, Larissa, Abhay, Anurag, they've all moved on to different roles. So the team there is a little different. Yes, we still have a lot of familiar faces that I stay in touch with. But I feel like those relationships are lifelong. I'm not worried about those. I think a little bit of competition is always good for the industry, and I think it couldn't come at a better time, especially at the intersection of software and hardware.
What about the other direction? You think some of those good friends might be colleagues of yours at some point in the future? The opportunity to work with you again?
Well, look, I think it's always fun to be working with individuals like that, right? I think, but Neat's got a fantastic team. I think Tormod and team have done an amazing job of building out
A
an engineering
lot of
team.
that
So
fantastic team and you've worked with before.
yeah, some of them are familiar faces. So I think we've got a great team, and I will. Regardless, I'll continue to have good relationships and stay in touch with these individuals. I'm not too worried about that.
All right. So we'll wrap this up here with a few more questions. What this is your first time in the CEO slot. What excites you and what concerns you about that?
Yes, and that was the other one of the other reasons. I think being CEO of a smaller company versus being an executive in a larger company comes with its own benefits and downsides also. So a larger company, you do end up, spending a fair amount of time in a bigger ecosystem, which means you may not be able to move as fast as you'd like. So I'm looking forward to just moving faster because the buck stops with you and you can make a lot of those decisions. On the flip side, a larger company has access to channels and capital a lot more so than a smaller company might. But that's where I've got a board that's very supportive, so and familiar. So I'm hoping that will actually also be a lot easier. But really looking forward to moving faster, ninja speed, making decisions faster. I think the things that while I might not have been in a CEO role at my previous roles, I've had most functions reporting into me, so that would be maybe new, but not as much, right? I'll be spending a lot more time with my CFO and board members, some of which I had to do at Aptiv, given the transaction that they're going through. So I've had experience doing that, but really looking forward to moving faster with the product and the go-to-market team and scaling the company, getting ready for the next phase.
And your board are also some people that have the ex-Tandberg DNA with you, with OJ and Frederick and some of the other people. So it's not people that are unfamiliar with the industry, and that's got to be a plus as well.
Yep.
I'll ask you a last question, and this is unfair because you haven't even hit the ground running yet. You're not in the building yet. What do you consider to be your first few priorities? What's the top of mind for you to get in there once you open the door and see what's going on?
Yeah, it is early, and I'm going to spend some time with the leadership team, the rest of the team, who I'm really looking forward to meeting for the first time. They don't know about this until it's today, I guess. But the two main focus areas, if I may, for me, the first 30 days is going to be what else is needed to scale the current business so that we continue the growth that Neat has been seeing. So scale the business from a product portfolio standpoint. I know there's some large room gaps that the team's looking to quickly close out. So I know they've got a really good plan around that, but also scale from a go-to-market standpoint, right? So which is when you go from a few hundred million to multiple $100 million, $1 billion, the processes needed from a go-to-market standpoint, the channel presence, the way you support them, those need to be scaled. And the team's done a decent job at that, but it just requires a new level of focus and investment. So that's the existing business. And the second is going to be some of these newer use cases that I mentioned. I really believe that powerful compute with AI and large language models running on these devices is going to enable a new class of experiences. So I'm going to be spending time with the team building those out. Those will probably come a little later, but start to build those out. And that's what I'm going to be focused on, and really looking forward to sharing more about both those things. They're both extremely exciting to me, and that's why I decided to make the switch.
Well,
Well,
again,
I'm really excited for you, Javed. I think David and I are both very excited about the Neat product line in general. My advice to you is your first priority is get that Neat board 32 shipping everywhere. We were really excited to see the preview of that product. But yeah, you've got a great path ahead of you. Pretty exciting.
you have our congratulations and what we know will be a very successful tenure as CEO of the firm.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave, good advice, and we'll be following up on those things. But really looking forward to more conversations like this. So see you guys soon.
Hello, this is Dave Michels from TalkingPointz. I'm with Dave Danto from TalkingPointz, and we have a special guest with us today. We have Roopam Jain from Frost & Sullivan. Welcome, both of you.
Always
Hello.
good to be here.
Fantastic. We are here to talk about, we're here to have an open conversation about the big news that I think surprised many of us, that Javed Khan, who we all know from Cisco, who left the industry 2 years ago to go work in automotive, is returning or has returned to the industry as the CEO of Neat. I don't know for sure about the two of you, but I was like, wow, that's a big surprise. So big enough surprise that I thought we should get the three of us together to have a conversation. So with that, Roopam, why don't you start off the conversation?
Yeah, sure. And just at the opening, yes, it was a wow news, and we have seen some big leadership changes in the industry, right? Across other companies, Logitech, HP Poly, all have seen some changes in their leadership team. But it's really great to have Javed back in the industry. I've always liked his approach. Great leader, great listener. I'm just curious, your take on why do you think Javed came back from automotive? What could be the factors that brought him back to the world of enterprise comms?
David?
Well, I've seen a lot of shakeup. And this is not the best answer, Dave. You'll have a better answer than I will. But I've seen a lot of shakeup over the last 6 to 8 months of people leaving larger companies, prestigious companies, for smaller companies out of fear that they do it before they get cut in the next wave of whatever the layoffs have been. Because we've been experiencing wave after wave after wave of consolidation and refocus and rechanneling of money into AI and other things. So I don't know that that's really the reason that he would have chosen to come back. But, when I've got good friends that are leaving Microsoft for small integrators, and I've got people in the industry, we're going through a heck of a shakeup right now, and people are just trying to stay safe. And I think it could be a simple situation where Javed would have thought that, going back to a space that he is comfortable with, that he has knowledge in, and in a small enough company where now he's the star, he's the CEO, that buys him the ability to really apply his knowledge and get through this volatile time in a place where he feels like he'll be able to do the most good.
Yeah, I don't have a better answer, David. I think when I heard he was going to automotive, I was kind of surprised at first. I think I spoke to him briefly about why you're going to automotive, and he talked about the industry is going through some big transformations, a big change, and he saw a big opportunity there. I could see that. I could see why that would be exciting. The thing is, he went to a company called Active. And Active is like a component provider within a car, and he's used to. I mean, he's always had so much emphasis on the total experience, and I would imagine that he might have been a little disappointed in that, and so maybe that's why he came back. But yeah, I was really surprised that he went to automotive.
Yeah. One thing I must add is regardless of why he left or why he came back, one of the biggest advantages of leaving this industry and then coming back into it is a change in perspective. You have the experience, you have the knowledge and all the relationships that he built from the past. And then coming back sometimes means just getting this opportunity to look at things with a fresh lens, And I think that's what we need as an industry right now. We have to shake up things a little bit. We have to redefine the market. We have to bring growth back in collaboration. So hopefully this is like a good move, not just for Neat, but for everyone.
I agree with what you're saying, Rupam, in that we are in a bit of an industry lull. And again, I know I'm the outside, the naysayer on this one, but we're in an industry lull because every second and third word coming out of every company in our industry is AI. And I've been making the point, whether it's correct or incorrect, to be talking about that, it starts to become this drone, this noise floor, that everybody's saying the same thing and nobody's breaking through and nobody's really hearing anything. So the opportunity to come in and be talking about something other than AI is exciting. Is the idea that somebody could come in and say, "Well, look at how we're approaching modularity, and look at how we're approaching, it's AI again, but look at how we're approaching, the ability to be smart at the endpoints, the ability to move all these services out to the edge. Look at all the ability, just a different message than AI. You have the opportunity at this point to come in into a less filling operation and say tastes great and make it sound like you're a genius because you've got another message. So that could be one of the reasons as well. It's another opportunity to sort of break through that.
Yeah, change the messaging around AI, not just talk about AI, but what does it mean for customers? What can it do for you? And, I think that is really, really important.
The question of, going to automotive is interesting, but another way to look at it, and you kind of asked this, Rupam, is why did he leave enterprise comms? And I think it was sad when he announced he was leaving enterprise comms. So I think he had a pretty strong reputation, not just with the analysts, but with a lot of the employees at Cisco. And that's a tougher one to answer. Obviously, we don't know why he left, but I think it's the reasons why people usually leave a job is either they feel like their work is done, or they feel like there's less opportunity to excel. And I look at where Cisco's at, and what he's accomplished. They accomplished so much. I mean, he came in, and there was a lot of disarray when he came in as leader of that collab group, and he was able to fix that. He was able to get a lot of people promoted. He was able to get some stability after the pandemic, and Cisco's kind of shifted a little bit of its focus more toward AI-ready data centers. And maybe he felt that, I don't know how many acquisitions Javed did, but maybe he felt that there was less opportunity to excel in his current role.
Well, I would also say that you never want to discount the personal piece of this. We could all be looking at what's the big, macroeconomic conditions and what's going on with the equipment and what's going on with that. And it can always just be that you're working for somebody you don't like, or you're not getting the political support that you need, or you're not happy with your compensation package. It could be one of those personal reasons. Those are at least
he wanted a discount on the car. That's what he wanted. That's what he wanted.
Yeah. As you look through my career, half the times I've left and moved for another role was because of that. Was because they'd put me in a box and I couldn't get out of that box at that company. In order to get out of the box, I had to go somewhere else. So, Javed had a very big role in Cisco collaboration, but he wasn't the CEO, and nobody was recommending him to take over for Chuck Robbins' role. So by leaving the company and coming back to a different company, now all of a sudden somebody's pulling out the big chair for him. Sometimes
you bring up a really interesting question. So let me ask the two of you, which role is more senior, or which role has more influence? Would you say that the SVP of Cisco Collab has more influence, or the CEO of Neat? What do you think?
Which role has more influence? I mean, honestly, it's hard to compare, right? Cisco and Neat are just very different companies. They're playing very different games. Cisco's approach is just so broad, so multi-domain. They operate at a scale that not too many of their competitors in the devices business can operate at. And they always win on this full stack story. We have heard so much about, the power of control hub, and that trickles down to the meeting room, to the personal collaboration level. So, their approach is networking, security, collab, manageability across the enterprise, right? And that's a big value prop. I think it's a moat very few device vendors can match. Neat, on the other hand, is a smaller company. It has a different culture. I think they are, if I have the number right, they're roughly a $250 million business today, big number, but still, in market share terms, they're about 10% of the market. So they're relatively small. But what I really like about Neat is their focus. They just stand out with their focus on what they do best. And they've built such a strong brand. When you say neat, people always say great design, modern devices, products that are easy to use, and that combined with, the very, very solid savvy marketing that they have done. So I think it makes Neat an influential company to be, and I wouldn't compare it with Cisco. Also, their size gives them the benefit of agility. And I think that's one of the things that really motivates leaders to move to a company like Neat. They're a privately held company as of now, likely to go public at some point, but they can move faster. They can
Yeah.
take some bold bets. And I think as a company, they're ready for the next evolution. So, if they move fast on this opportunity, if they move beyond the small world of video devices and they move towards more software and AI-driven experience, more intelligence at the edge, as we just talked about, and really, really important, more context-aware meeting experiences, which is really lacking today. So I think this is where Javed is coming in, and just I feel, he has way more latitude to reshape a company at Neat than he would have had at Cisco. So
I think, again, if I reflect back on my career, I've always enjoyed positions at smaller, more agile organizations than I did at larger, more prestigious organizations. Because the larger the organization, the more the bureaucracy slash governance slash whatever else you want to call it, the good connotation, bad connotation, doesn't really matter. The more you're hemmed in by the things you can and can't do. I think Neat is already known for being an upstart, with the purple colored buses that they had running around outside GITEX and all the rest of the things that they do that are a little bit, wacky and out there. I think he's going to have a lot more agility and a lot more speed to move the market, which I think is something that we would all desire. So I think that it's been a good move for him. Although, again, there aren't too many people that I know that were at Cisco that went directly to a competitor. So it could simply be that, Javed thinks he's going to have more ability and more of an opportunity than what he was doing at Aptiv.
I think it's an interesting point, and he was gone. I think I said active earlier. I should say Aptiv with a P, but he was gone for 2 years. So I would assume all of his non-competes and stuff that he may have had are probably expired by now. So he's a free agent would be my assumption. And yeah, I think you guys raised some interesting points about that agility. He's going to have a lot more freedom at Neat than he probably had at Cisco.
All right. So now that it's a blank canvas for all intents and purposes at Neat, while they've got some great products in market and they have some great products on roadmap and they had some really good plans, he can come in there and essentially, wipe a swish of his hand and try some new things. What do you think is going to be on their planning, on their roadmap? What kind of ideas do you think he's bringing in for them to discuss?
I've been thinking a lot about that actually, and because Neat is so much smaller than Cisco, and he was so successful at Cisco, it's like, what could he possibly do? But I gotta imagine they've already had a lot of conversations at the recruitment phase, and Neat is an agile company, as you guys have pointed out. They know how to do manufacturing, they know how to do design. There's no real reason that they're limited to video conferencing. I mean, they can expand beyond video conferencing. I think with the software apocalypse that we've talked about, that right now the in thing is companies that make hardware and software. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities. Maybe even automotive. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's got some automotive ideas. But
Dave, let me pause you for accuracy and come right back to you. Just to be clear, as we're posting this video, as this conversation, he will have just started at the firm. So he will have had conversations with the board of directors, but he will not have had conversations with the rest of the team. That will have just started right about now. So I don't know how much pre-discussion is taking place. He and the board could have said, we want you to build airplanes or boats or cars or something, but he hasn't spoken to his team yet.
No, I think that's clear. But in that recruitment phase, when you're talking to the board and talking through and taking this position, there must have been some speculation about where you want to go with this company or where they want to go with the company. And I think it's probably going to be to expand out of video conferencing. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in video conferencing. I think that Javed has a lot of expertise in that, and that's obviously Neat's bread and butter. But I think there's an opportunity here that they are an agile manufacturing company, software savvy manufacturing company. They've also got their own version of Android, which they no longer need because they're using MDEP with their Android products. And so they've got a lot of capability there. And I reason I mentioned automotive is just because he came from automotive industry and because OJ, one of the owners, is a car guy. So nothing more than that. But there might be an opportunity to build automotive parts or jet parts or whatever. But I think that they're going to be looking at this as an opportunity to expand out of video, and that's pure speculation.
I'm not, yeah, speculation. I'm not sure of that. I don't see need going in the direction of building cars and planes. I think they will first of all double down on their strengths. You know, they're doing really well in certain things and continue to do that. But today, Neat is known to be a meeting room device vendor. I mean, they have made moves in the direction of software. You know, they are selling more Pulse, which is their management software platform. So they have more of a recurring model than ever before. But I think there's so much more that can be done in the meeting room. And this is something that, you know, Javed has talked about when I spoke with him a couple of weeks back, is that there's a big opportunity that lies outside of the traditional meeting construct. You know, we go into a room, unless you start a Zoom, Teams, or Google call, that meeting room device is essentially a passive piece of hardware. And so what more can be done? You know, if someone is sitting there locally brainstorming, or if there are conversations happening in other parts of the workplace, couldn't the device, any device, be an intelligent participant? So I think there's an opportunity in terms of just kind of changing the definition of, you know, what a room, a space, and a meeting can do, looking at new use cases, expanding the reach of the market, and edge AI. I mean, we keep going back to it. First of all, edge AI is not new. It's not some new concept. The industry has been moving on that front. Cisco has been moving at a very fast pace in that direction. Neat itself has innovated on that. So there's a lot more that can be done. And things like transcription, captions, meeting summaries. Why does all of that processing need to happen in the cloud? Why is all of that intelligence today cloud dependent? So I think going forward, a lot of that processing can happen on the local device. It can move to the edge, and it has huge advantages, right? It has privacy, latency, reliability, in my mind, cost efficiency. So there will be a thoughtful approach from Neat in terms of what truly belongs in the cloud and what can be moved to the edge. And obviously, they'll be working in partnership with their cloud platform providers. It would be really interesting to see how that pans out. But a lot of the more intelligent, more advanced processing can be done in the cloud, and the rest can be moved to the edge. And that's where the market is going. And I think it has implications in terms of affordability for users. One thing, and you know, at Frost & Sullivan, we keep our eyes on the market at all times. We are very data driven. We look at numbers. We draw conclusions based on numbers. And the market is slowing down. The market is significantly slowing down for a host of reasons. But I think one of them is the appetite to invest thousands of dollars into every meeting space, not just on hardware, but also on these increasingly expensive room licenses that now layer AI add-ons, right? Premium this, premium that. The market has limits. And then when you factor in things like manageability and operations and everything, that model has a ceiling. So the device can do a lot more. It can do a lot more cost efficiently, and that can scale the reach of collaboration across the enterprise. So this is where I see Neat going, at least in the short term. Maybe in the mid to long term, they'll build cars and planes, but I see them becoming more software driven.
No, I never said they're going to build cars and planes, but I could see them building hardware for cars and planes. But my point I want to agree with you, but I can't, because so much of what you're describing is controlled by the platform, and so that, you know, right now Neat is in a ecosystem dominated by Zoom and Microsoft, and so much of what you're describing is dominated by those platform makers, and so I'm thinking again, you know, when you get someone like Javed to come back into the industry, to go back to a smaller company like this, what's he going to do? He's not going to spend all day fighting with Microsoft and Zoom about what he can do on the edge versus what they can do in the cloud. But I just think that the AI conversation and the software apocalypse, has changed the value of a company like Neat, where you can make, they're an agile company that can make hardware. They have an operating system. They know how to make software. They know how to leverage AI. I don't want to throw you off with cars and airplanes, whatever. My point is that they are an agile manufacturing company that can build anything. And so, you mentioned that they might have an IPO or something like that. If I'm someone like Javed, I'm thinking, well, gosh, I can come in, I can do this, I can get this to an IPO state. This can get really interesting very quickly. I think that staying within that video space doesn't provide a compelling enough opportunity.
Well, let
That's my
me point out to both of you that while I agree with what you're saying, you're both talking very strategically, medium term and long term, and I think that there's a whole bucket of tactical stuff that needs to be worked on right now. When Neat came onto the market, and Poly came onto the market with its X30, there were no video bars, there were no Android devices. These were the first two devices ever to run Zoom. That was how they entered the space. If you open a page in any book nowadays, you got 9,000 video bar companies falling out of the pages on the coupons, buy ours, buy ours. So it's a different world. The idea that Neat's strategy around expansion, which for the longest time has been modular, has been, when we want to get into a room, we're going to use this audio company's microphone and speaker, and we're going to use this company's TV, we're going to use our component here. I don't know if that's going to scale much longer when the audio company and the TV company are now also making devices that compete with them. So the question is going to be, how do they grow those edges, which was Janine's strategy, which I'm sure is going to be Javed's strategy, which is, down further into the desk and up further into the bigger rooms. How do they do that without relying on partners that are essentially unreliable because they're being competitors at this point? I think that in the short term is going to be what the fix has to be.
Let's go to another question here. I want to throw out a question for you guys. Do you think Javed will be recruiting people from Cisco? And I ask this because we talked earlier about probably his ability to his restriction to recruit people is probably over, and he was popular at Cisco. So do you think he'll be reaching out to Cisco people?
Him reaching out, I'm not sure. Will people be moving around as a result of this? Abso-freaking-lutely. The game of musical chairs takes place whenever somebody gets a new role in a leadership position, and who did they work with before and who could they count on? They want to either bring in their own people, they want to work for a boss they worked for in the last time. They have to compare, well, what am I doing now versus what I could be doing in this new role? Everybody's going to be making those decisions. And frankly, we're in an environment right now in business where I can say generally no employee is happy with their job. Most people are really looking at what that next thing is. There's been a lot of discontent, and the cycles have moved from buyer's market to seller's market back and forth. So I would be stunned if this is the only move as a result of Javed taking the role.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, typically with this kind of a change, you always see some movement, right? The thing is, Neat is not looking to become Cisco 2.0, right? So, their individual strengths come from different areas, but I do see merit in, selective hiring, maybe a few individuals that have that deep platform AI experience, and that will help Neat move faster in the direction of agentic AI. I think that's an area that they really need to move fast on.
We've been talking a lot about MDEP and Android. One of the things that I keep on pointing out to people is that Android is the most popular operating system in the world, and Neat has developed and spent a lot of money developing it, their own version of Android. They call it Neat OS, and that's no longer needed at Neat because of they're using the MDEP. And so
I let you get away with that the first time, Dave. I don't think I'm going to let you get away with that the second time.
Well, hold on. No, I just want to say that this is a really powerful capability that they have that no one's really talking about. So I really think that if he's going to go into Neat, that he's going to have to. I think that's going to be something that he's going to be focusing on.
Well, you got Google that said we are never going to run Meet on MDEP ever till the dawn of time. So there's definitely a powerful company, at least one, maybe more, behind the idea of never MDEP. And as well as the whole industry looks like it's falling into that, and Neat has had to as well in order to get team certification, I don't think it's accurate to say that they're now folding and putting their stuff in a drawer. I think there's a lot of opportunity for additional play in that space.
I agree with you guys. Neat could possibly expand into newer markets, new growth areas. But today they are in the meeting space, right? And a big question is meetings is not a high growth market anymore. I would say the meeting experience is frankly boring today. There's a reason why some UC vendors have quietly shifted their messaging away from the core meeting platforms towards more, faster growing parts of the communication stack.
Everyone I meet with says our meetings are boring. It follows me.
Yeah, I question whether or not the meetings talking about the meeting platforms talking about AI is because there's no more movement in the meetings, or is it boring because everybody has shifted the message to AI? That's a chicken and egg thing for me.
That's a chicken and egg thing, but the bottom line is that, I mean, look at the way we are communicating right now. Has the experience fundamentally changed in the last few years? Same interface, same experience, similar outcomes. And the room should not behave the same way for every meeting. If a design team is going in for iterative thinking, they have a completely different need than an HR person going in, or a sales and marketing team. And so I think the question is, can we bring more context, more excitement, more relevancy to that experience? And, I think if I were the CEO of Neat, and putting myself in Javed's shoes, I wouldn't try to just play better in the same sandbox. How can you change the playground?
Yeah.
How can you take intelligence to everywhere it belongs across the workplace? And so I think that more context, more intelligence, just expanding outside of where they are playing today, and just making that communication workflow better is an opportunity.
At least removing some of the rigidity, removing some of it's a square box and it's a microphone puck on the table and it's a camera, and a thermos and whatever else we're talking about. At least let's remove some of that rigidity and start talking about how we can build all kinds of fun things in a meeting room.
Along those lines, is the Logitech Spot, right? Which is does not have a camera, but it has, what is the technology, millimeter wave or something like that, where it could detect presence, detects air quality, and they're putting that in not only meeting rooms but in other rooms. I think that's a really interesting, along Roopam's point, that there's so much more expansion and opportunity beyond a lens and a microphone, that you can really take the enterprise rooms to a different level.
Last words, folks. What do we think?
It's good for the industry, I think, and I like where Neat is today, and they need to continue accelerating their innovation cadence. They need to really leverage. I know you guys, especially David, you don't want me to talk too much about AI this, AI that, but that's where the future is. The art of the possible is with what you can do with agentic AI and shared spaces in rooms, meeting rooms, outside of rooms, and so on. And so I think Neat should just continue doing that. They should look outside of their core markets to see where the closest adjacencies are. The one thing that we did not talk about is they've been winning big in large rooms. And there is clearly an opportunity for them to get into adjacent categories, such as advanced audio. That's an area of growth. So there's a lot of opportunities around where they play. And then, of course, in the long term, there are immense growth areas that Neat could get into.
I agree with you. They've got 10 camera arrays, at least on their demo station, where you've got 3 cameras in each of 3 Neat centers, and you got 1 camera in the front of the room. That's 10 cameras that are all talking to each other, saying, who's got the best shot? I do. Let me switch to it. Now, why do those cameras have to be in rigid devices? Why can't those cameras be in the bezel of a display, or inside a painting on the side of the wall, or inside a lighting fixture in the room? So again, I think breaking the rigidity, it doesn't have to be a rectangular screen in the front of the room. Why can't it be the whole wall? Why can't it be the side walls using DV-LED? I think there are a lot of opportunities there to grow and make the meeting exciting without having to break into anything more complicated than what they're already doing.
I think those are excellent points. It's amazing how far the industry has changed, how much the industry has changed just in the past few years. And I think of the old television shows just had 1 camera. And it's like they did an entire sitcoms with just 1 camera. And we're doing these meetings around 1 table with 4 or 5 cameras now, or more. It's just amazing, and how much better the experience has become. We're going to get to the point with hundreds of cameras in 1 room. It's coming.
Well, there are hundreds of cameras in 1 room. They're in everybody's pockets and everybody's devices and everybody's mobiles.
Yep.
Now can we get them to talk to each other? Well, it's a great conversation, some great speculation, some good advice for Javed. We all want to see him succeed. We want to see Neat continue to succeed and excel. And all we can say is we're going to keep watching it and figure out where we're going to go with it. But for now, thanks very much.
That's a good tagline. Keep watching. Yes.
Keep watching. Well, Neat doesn't need a new tagline. They're purple cloud somewhere. But we'll definitely keep an eye on it and see where it goes from now. But for now, thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.